This is Write What You Know, the storytelling program on Bizz 99.9 FM Substitute Radio. I'm your host Geoff Walker. Welcome and thank you for joining me. Today we will be reciting a short story called The Grim Reaper Strikes Again. Enjoy the story. Almost there, sir, Jim said. Geoff didn't say anything. He didn't need or want to, so he didn't. He merely gave a slight nod to Jim as a sign of acknowledgement. Returning to his notes that he was going over before being addressed by the rider, Jim, Geoff soon got so lost in his world of logic and metaphors and began, in his mind, to even question if that conversation ever did take place. The ride was quite bumpy, not exactly to Geoff's liking. He's never been fond of anything slightly uncomfortable, but this time he didn't really care, didn't think about it. This was most certainly going to be the first, last, and only time he was ever going to travel on this road. The scenery was of somewhat a unique one. It was an ascending valley. At the top of the property was Geoff's new home. His final resting place, the building to which he was to end his life within. Then the land split into two sides, both containing little vegetation, a few trees and some grass. In the middle was a long, deep, steep, rocky fall before an empty stream. In the springtime, water would flow down, but the rest of the year it remained very dry and lifeless. The two sides eventually went as far as to become two hills, the only access to the house, a small, bumpy, one-lane driveway which goes on for a solid 100 metres, starting from a much longer road belonging to the farmers living there. The house was reasonably small compared with houses in this area, but size did not matter. It was ugly, but looks didn't matter. It was old, but that didn't matter. Rusted and collecting cobwebs. No, if the house was a little larger, you could have little children in costumes and Halloween copying the Americans and saying that that was the house that belonged to Dracula. Geoff didn't care about the house or about the children at all. In conclusion, Geoff, for a certain reason, what is this certain reason? It doesn't matter, and it never will. Decided that he just didn't care. He bought his new house with only the intention of living out his days within its dark hallways. On the carriage is Jim and Stuart, Geoff's two employed escorts. Geoff is an old man and hasn't been able to drive anything for a long time. At the very moment the sunset changes its shade of orange, the carriage began decelerating. Usual horse noises could be heard from Geoff's box. The window isn't large enough or wide enough, so Geoff does not see what's going to happen. He only hears. He does not move, either towards or away from what has stopped the carriage in its progression down the road. Jim got off his seat, walked over to the side door, put his arms on the door and said, "Sorry about this, Geoff. Some idiot's got his horse parked in the middle of the road. Stuart's gone to talk to him." Geoff very strangely didn't react at all harsh once he had thought through and realised the fact that a lone rider was parked on his private driveway without any possible access somehow. The next thing that came was silence. Footsteps. Stuart's voice. Words. Unable to be heard precisely. Silence. A sudden shriek. Then came the sounds of a human body being choked to death. Silence. Geoff was somewhat disturbed by what he had just heard. He turned slowly to Jim. Jim's face gave a strong confirmation to Geoff of what his suspicions already knew. Jim's face showed it more or less represented the true nature of fear. Not fear of panic, not fear of death, not fear of trauma, nor sorrow. Jim's face showed fear itself. As Stuart's body plummeted to the hard, rocky ground, footsteps proceeded towards the carriage. Jim began to back off. He slipped. Retaining his balance, Jim began to hurry away. The footsteps, still were only in front of the carriage, stopped. Jim, who was now a good, well-built 30 metres behind the carriage, began to scream. He too was experiencing the full proportion of suffocation. Jim's body fell to the ground. Geoff did not move. Why was he still in the carriage? Why hadn't he run away? Why was he just sitting there? Geoff, still sitting in the position he had for most of the trip, was fiddling with his pocket watch. His pocket watch, unlike the common cliché, did not contain a photo of a loved one. It does not bear any sentimental value from his past, nor any other time period. It hasn't worked for as long as Geoff can remember, which is sort of an invalid comprehension, because for the last few hours, Geoff has been forgetting this at a constant rate. This watch, made a very long time ago, is worthless, and Geoff does not know why he still got it. Of all his possessions, he has chosen this to be the one he's concentrating on while this event is happening just outside his carriage. The footsteps continue. The orange light of the sunset that was spiraling into the carriage via the window began to eclipse. The handle of the door turned, and the door began to open. Welcome back. That was the short story, The Grim Reaper Strikes Again. I'm Geoff Walker, and you've been listening to Write What You Know on Bizz 99.9 FM Substitute Radio. Please join me again next time for more short stories. Till we meet again, take care and happy writing.